Today is the 30th of June. It is the 1600th hour, 22 minutes afterwards. So I've been sitting here thinking about this whole Roe versus Wade thing being reversed and the issue of abortion being thrown to the states, and watching the collective meltdown from liberals across the nation has been hasn't been more satisfying since the day Trump got elected. I'll be honest with you. But I've made a video about this before, and it just kind of, I thought I would kind of revisit it again, and why abortion, why it is a huge deal. We as human beings should try to acknowledge this. Back in the day, I remember when it used to be called pro-abortion, anti-abortion. And then the left decided to change the name to pro-choice because it makes it sound better. That's what leftists do. They take names, they take titles, and they change them to things that are more acceptable. I'll give you a quick example of this. Several years ago, it was called Gay Pride. It's not called Gay Pride anymore. It's just called Pride. Why did they do that? Who in what room decided to change that and make it, put it out there to be consumed by the public and endorsed by everything? Who did that? Somebody did. Somebody in a boardroom somewhere came up with that. They do that shit all the time. Global warming, climate change. Climate change sounds much more better because there's a lot of people that would love global warming. So just remember that the whole idea, pro-choice sounds better than pro-abortion. There was a time where abortion was illegal. I was conceived at that time when abortion was illegal, and I pretty much know that if abortion was legal, that would have been me. That would have been me. So to say that men don't have a right to say anything, that's bullshit. It is. It's bullshit because it affects all human beings. And what I want to address is why it's morally, I was thinking about this today, and I don't know when I understood the concept of abortion, but I do remember back in high school, there was a young girl who was younger than me at the time. I know she was an underclassman that we were kind of friends with, and she was, I think, a freshman in high school. And she had an abortion, and she shouted it from the rooftops that she had this. And I can remember how repugnant I thought that was at a young age. So let's say I was probably maybe 16, 17 at the time, and I just remember thinking, man, why are you bragging to the world that you had an abortion? And I thought to myself, why did I think that? Because in the very nature of who I am, I understood that as a human life. And there was a time where they said, well, it's just a glob of tissue. It ain't a glob of tissue. We are asexual beings, which means that we have a male and we have a female. That is established science. There's nothing in between unless you're an earthworm. And when the sex cells called gametes meet, all the genetic material determines right then and there whether you're going to be a boy, a girl, what color eyes you're going to have, the color of your hair, the texture of your hair, your temperament. It determines everything at that very basic level. As soon as the egg and the sperm meet and you have a flash of light, because there is a flash of light at conception on all creatures with an egg and a sperm, there's a flash of light. Check it out. It's true. There's this spark of life. There's this flash of light, and boom, you have a new, unique, genetic individual, completely unique, all to its own. There is never going to be another person like you. And I'm going to wrap this around we like to make this it's about humans. Look, the same people that are screaming that they're pro-choice will be the first ones that want to break your neck if you took your pregnant dog to the vet to have the uterus torn out with the puppies in it. Really think about it. Let's think of my favorite subject of crazy cat ladies. Do you think a crazy cat lady in 5 minutes would take a pregnant cat to the vet to have the uterus taken out and the kittens removed and thrown in a trash can? You know damn well they wouldn't do that. But they're the same people that are going to be screaming, my body, my right. Think about it. The hypocrisy behind it. The science says, all right, look at it this way. A fruit fly has 8 chromosomes. It's unique to a fruit fly. We have, I think, 24 pairs. So a fruit fly, I think, has 8 pairs. And that's unique to the fruit fly. Just as it's unique to us. You can't change it. It's DNA is written biological code. And everything about that organism is written in that DNA, and you cannot change it. So a human life is a human life regardless. In a biblical sense, in the Old Testament, in Old Testament law, Mosaic law, if a woman was raped, the child was supposed to live. The child was supposed to live. You did not take the life of a child conceived in rape. I can understand why a woman wouldn't want a child conceived in rape. I get it. I can understand why a woman wouldn't want a child conceived in incest or whatever. I can understand that. And believe it or not, our laws have always reflected the life of the mother, physically and for those things. It's always been there. That hasn't changed. It always will be. It's always been there. But see, when you get people up screaming about women's health, it comes down to this. Everything, meaning mental health, woman's health. So now an abortion, you need to have an abortion for your mental health. Look, nobody says you got to go out and fuck. If you're out there fucking and you get pregnant, that's on you. Now, as a man, men should be responsible. Don't be out there screwing around with women thinking you're not going to get them pregnant because they tell you they're on birth control. Don't trust them. I'm speaking out of men. Don't be spilling your seed because some woman tells you she's on birth control. Because believe it or not, women do lie. You know, regardless, you know what? The truth is you shouldn't be out screwing around. Am I an angel? Absolutely not. Have I been the biggest dog or the biggest man whore in the world? No. Okay, I haven't been. But here's the thing. I didn't run around screwing everything I could find without any consequences because I didn't want the responsibility of a child, because I knew that if I had a child, I would be all in on it. And even if it was conceived out of wedlock, I'd be all in, and that child would be my child, and I would invest everything I had into that. And I decided I didn't want that. So I made it to 47 with no children. And I have no complaints about it. I could, but I might go into that another day. But my whole issue with abortion is really, really simple. Don't sit there saying it's not human life when it is. And there shouldn't be a double standard when it comes to human life. Now, I'm going to go say something really easy about how the way the law works. And I've been attacked for this, but it is the truth because it happens. If I'm driving down the road and I have an accident with a pregnant woman who's on her way to an abortion clinic, and the child dies, even if she isn't on her way to an abortion clinic, and the child dies in the womb, I get charged with the double homicide for that. I get charged with the death of the child in the womb. Now, a woman that's pregnant can go and terminate the life that's in her womb and not be charged with it. Now, why is that? Why is it a human life on one side of the law, and then on the other side of the law, it's not? See, it makes no sense. It either is or it isn't. It's either protected under law or it's not. And that is my total problem with abortion, because you can't have it both ways. The logic of it isn't sensible. Now, we can go into a moral reason why it's wrong. And as human beings, we are more than just animals. We got to stop behaving like them. You know, I hear people say this. True story. I mean, people do it now. Well, homosexuality is natural. It's found in the animal kingdom. That's very true. So is cannibalism. Does that mean you want to engage in it? The world, the natural world, is filled with animals that abort their offspring or kill their offspring. It's not that unusual. Kangaroos. Kangaroos are marsupials. They don't have a placenta, which means the baby is born, crawls into the pouch, and finishes its development there. And there comes a time when that baby is so, the mother is carrying it. Let's say she's pursued by a pack of dingoes. She will reach in there, grab her Joey out, throw it to the pack of wild dogs to save her own skin. Okay, rats. Rats are generally very good mothers unless the mothers are under stress. If the rats are under stress, if a pregnant rat is under a lot of stress and she gives birth, she will eat those offspring. She will eat them. Should we engage in that kind of behavior? When a human woman is under stress, should she kill and eat her children? We do have women that kill their children out of stress. Don't we have that? And then we charge them with murder. We have to stop behaving like animals. We have to look at our lives as being something different and sacred. And this is where it comes down to the morality and the whole religious aspect of being human. Because if you reduce us down to the level of a rat or a kangaroo, we got a problem. I can go one step further in the natural world. In the natural world, it's very common for males of various species to kill offspring that is not theirs. Horses engage in this behavior. Lions engage in this behavior. A lot of animals do this. Bears, for instance, will kill cubs, even if they're their own, but they don't know that they're own, because they want the female to come into season so they can breed with them. So, should we endorse that kind of behavior? Should human men do that kind of thing? Kill the offspring of another man because it's not his genetic child? We're better than this. We are better than the animal kingdom. We are better than this because we can rationalize and think there is something special about humanity regardless of what you think. You may think that we're highly evolved apes. Well, if you keep pounding that into people's heads, they're going to behave like that. We're not just animals. Maybe we have a physical body that mimics all flesh, but nothing thinks like us. Our brains are not wired like other creatures. We are not creatures of instinct. We really aren't. Matter of fact, which is really unusual, we have very, very few instincts. Very few. We're creatures of reason. So when we reason through this whole abortion thing, it is a moral dilemma. But look at the people that are against it. And we can go into an issue on why this is important, why abortion is a spiritual thing, and it is human sacrifice. It is human sacrifice at the core level. It's human sacrifice on the altar of self at the very least. But there are spiritual implications for the sacrifice of human life, particularly children. And in the spirit world, it don't matter if the child is 5, 6, 7, or 3 days old, or 4 days old, or 4 days after conception, or 2 days after conception. It doesn't matter. The more innocent, the better in the spirit realm. And there's a reason human beings sacrificed children in the past. There's a reason they did this. Don't think that we're so sophisticated now that we don't do this. It's when a government sanctions human sacrifice, there's something involved They're doing something. There's something on a grander scale that's being done in the spirit realm behind the scenes. If you don't think some of these political leaders across the globe are not dressing up in robes and bowing their knees on an altar for some wicked entity, you're sadly mistaken. Does that sound crazy? I probably would have thought that once when I was, but I don't. I had these thoughts and feelings about these things since I was young and was able to understand that there is more going on with humanity than just what we are being taught. And you have blinders on a whole section of humanity who think this is nonsense. But it's the truth. Abortion, when it's endorsed and sanctioned by a government, brings judgment upon people. It brings judgment upon a nation. If people are doing it in alleys and so on and so forth, it makes that kind of thing a personal thing. It brings condemnation and judgment onto the individual versus a nation. That's like when sins are done privately versus collectively. There's a different thing that gets held. There's a different type of accountability. You are going to have judgment that comes upon a nation when a government endorses such a thing. You don't think? I'm just going to throw this out there, but the truth, whether you like it or not, or whether you think it's not, and it's nonsense. You don't think that the collapse of Germany after World War II wasn't judgment upon what was going on? You don't think what was happening, there was judgment brought on that nation because of leadership, of what they were doing? And I'm not talking about the war itself. You know damn well what happened during World War II. War is kind of an allowable thing to keep evil in check, because what happens is in the spirit realm there was war. There was war in the spirit realm. Why wouldn't there be war in the physical realm? Because it spills over. It spills over. There's, boy, this is so multifaceted, and I can go into it on a deeper scale. But I'm going to say this. I would have been an abortion if it was legal at the time. I have a niece that was conceived with what I would call forced copulation. Does that make anybody feel any better if we're going to change the term of something? Forced copulation. I have a niece that was conceived in forced copulation. Is her life worthless because of that? Absolutely not. So, maybe there's some women that might be watching this that might be thinking about an abortion. Look, there is no shame in giving a child up for adoption. It's so honorable to do something like that. It's a very honorable and a very noble thing to do, and it's nothing you should ever be ashamed of. And for the women who have had abortions, there's forgiveness for that, because you are carrying that scar around. And I know women who've had abortions, and you know what? Some of them can play a good game, like I didn't have a problem with it. It's okay. Deep down inside, they're not. They carry the guilt with them their entire lives. They really, really do. You really will carry the guilt with that for the rest of your life. You don't want that. You don't want that on your chest. I'm not going to condemn you for doing it, because sometimes we're young and we're stupid. But there's forgiveness at the cross for that kind of thing. You have to bring that to the cross. You have to bring that before Jesus and confess how you feel about it and where you're at. And He's going to forgive you for that. It's not unforgivable. But you're going to have to get on your knees for that, because you're going to carry that guilt and nastiness with it for the rest of your life, and it will affect you. To the men who forced women to get abortions, boy, I've known a few of you. You need to confess before the cross, because you are just as guilty. Because it takes two of you to father a child, to bring a child into the world. If you forced a woman to do that, you are just as guilty, if not more so. Because you probably, you kind of used all kinds of mental tactics to get a woman that didn't want to do it in the first place. And there's a lot of women that complied with that, and they lived with the guilt of that all the day of your life. And then when it was over, you thought, man, I'm off the hook. But you aren't. You're just as guilty. And you have to confess. You got to confess for that too. And admit that you did something wrong. Look, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty here. I'm trying to help you to find freedom from that. But let's call it what it is, man. It's the murder of our unborn children, and that's all it is. There's another aspect to this. Don't think that there isn't money to be made off of this. There's a lot of money to be made off of the fruit of the womb, so to speak. There is a lot of money to be made off of the discarded remains of a human child. I'm going to leave you with this thought. Back in the day, every time you had a surgery or something, you used to be able to look at whatever they removed out of you. I remember a time where they would show you the tooth that you had taken out of your mouth, like a wisdom tooth. There were a time where a surgeon would put a jar of formaldehyde with the tonsils in it was removed from a child and gave it to the child. I held the gallstone from a gallstone about this big, looked like an Italian sausage, from a woman that had a gallstone removed. They don't do that anymore because it's now what's considered hazardous waste. So they don't do that anymore. They don't even let you see what is removed from your own body, which is, to me, is kind of criminal. How do you think you would feel if you saw what was removed from your womb if you had an abortion? How do you think you as a man would know that was your child? Because I'm telling you, a developing human this big looks human. You can see the eyes, you can see the legs, you can see the fingers. It's just real small. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. It's just real small. That person had a personality that was already going to be personality traits that were already there, eye color, hair color, gender, you name it, it was all there. How would you feel if you're looking at this little tiny human being that you destroyed? How would you feel when you saw that? Don't look, you're a human being, you have emotions, you have feelings, don't deny it. Accept it for what it is. Accept the truth for what it is. And then go about dealing with it and healing from it. But don't pretend that it didn't happen. Don't pretend it is something that it's not. It's the destruction of human life at the very beginning of it. It's no different than destroying somebody's life at the end of their life when they're terminally ill or sick and somebody's, it's different if somebody doesn't want to be they don't want heroic means to save their life and so on. But when we get to that point where, well, this person's life isn't worth living, I'm going to leave you with this other point. If you discovered that there was a gay gene, if you discovered there were genes that determined if you were going to be a homosexual or not, and there were people who aborted their children knowing that the child would be gay, do you know how the homosexual community would react to that? And if you think that's far-fetched, it isn't. Because there are people now that abort children because they know the child is either going to have Down syndrome, or the child might be deaf, or the child might be blind. And they make a decision to eliminate that child based on that malady. Go and talk to a deaf person if they think that you should abort children that you know are going to be born deaf. Go talk to them. Go talk to them and see what they say. To them, it's an annihilation of a culture that they have formed around being deaf. Think about it. I hope this gives you something to think about. And I'm not trying to condemn anybody. I just want you to see truth. This whole my truth and your truth, it's all bullshit. There's just either absolute truth or there isn't. There's no in-between nonsense. Everything else is just in between. Is just opinion. There's absolute truth. There's nothing else. There's either truth for all people at all times throughout Yeah, it's true today, it's true yesterday, it's true tomorrow. And that's just all there is to it. Stop dancing around the issue and stop buying the liberal bullshit that they cram down our throat every single day. Till next time.